You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Hey listeners, let me let you in on a little secret. You don't have to stress about planning your class lessons, small groups, and individual sessions anymore. My school counseling membership program, Impact, is here to help. So, what do Impact members get? Monthly curriculum plans across all 3 tiers, SEL lessons, small groups, individual, and seasonal activities, step-by-step video implementation guides, bi-weekly Zoom coaching calls with me, and an exclusive Facebook group community. This membership is designed for school counselors who want to deliver the best possible content to their students, but who also want to just press the easy button. You'll get access to monthly curriculum plans, resources, support, and community so you can deliver quality, engaging, life-changing counseling lessons to your kiddos. So what do you think? Are you ready to make an impact? Join today at stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact. Hey there, thanks for listening to another episode of the School Counseling Simplified podcast. So this week, I actually have a special guest on for an interview, and that guest is Beth. Now, I love Beth. She is the ESL teacher behind Inspiring Young Learners. I actually know Beth personally, and she's really cool. So I think you're going to love this episode. But I was trying to think of ways we could collaborate with other educators outside of school counselors. So while I love talking about all things counseling and interviewing school counselors, sometimes I like to have some other educators on just to get different perspective, right? So different specialists, different teachers. I learned a lot, when we did our summer summit back in June, we had different specialists from all over, and I just learned so much, and they can bring a lot of insight into how we counsel our kiddos. So this episode's all about how school counselors can help those newcomers adjust. So these are those students who, are maybe displaced from war-torn countries, who are refugees, newcomers to the United States. Perhaps they're not, they don't speak any English yet, and they're just getting thrown into school. So how can we support these kiddos better? A lot of times they're coming from backgrounds of trauma as well. Anyways, I have a great conversation with Beth, and she gives us some practical strategies on things we can do. So I think you're going to love this one. Let's check it out. Hey, Beth, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. I'm so excited to chat with you. A little background for the listeners. So Beth and I met at the TPT conference in 2019, I think, in Austin. I know it does feel like forever ago. And we met then because we were kind of doing like a meetup with like expat or international sellers. So Americans who are living abroad, and Beth actually lives in Panama. So a neighboring country to Costa Rica that I've still never been. And have you been to Costa Rica at all? I don't remember.
I have, but not while you guys have been there. You
right.
and I, my friend, so I'm talking to her about how we need to get there. But Rachel and I are both pregnant right now, so can't fly.
Yeah,
so
yes,
so it's more to make it happen.
Exactly. Yeah, more fun facts. When we're recording this will air in August, so I probably won't have the baby yet. But we both have due dates within like 3 days of each other, so it's funny. But yeah, we need to get together, or I would just want to go to Panama too, for sure.
Yeah. No, or maybe we should host, for all of those who are listening, we could do some, broad trips for you guys to come down Panama.
Yeah.
See what it's like education here in these countries.
Yeah. And it's so different because you live in the city. You live in Panama City, which is kind of like Miami or something, right? Like huge city. And then I'm kind of in like a rural beach town. So people I think people think that when they think Panama, but you're like, no, I live in a huge city.
Yes. I've been asked if we have the babies in huts here. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. All right. Well, although I did hear a raccoon getting like killed by a snake last night. So it is a little more like that here. Yeah, but it is the jungle. So today, Beth's going to talk to us. I love chatting with counselors, but I wanted to have another educator on. I like to get just a variety of educators on to chat with us so we can become better counselors. And Beth is an ELL expert. So I want to pick her brain about how we as school counselors can support newcomers. But first, just tell us a little bit about who you are and your background in education.
Awesome. I'm excited to share with you today about that. So I grew up in Chicago area and lived there until I was 27, and then moved abroad here to Panama with my fiance at the time, husband now, and we've been here for 10 years. But I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. So I went in, from first grade on, we had that mindset and went on to college, got my teaching degree, and thankfully got my minor in Spanish. So that was really what kind of shifted me into the ELL world, because when I got out, there were no teaching jobs. So I was able to get my bilingual certificate and then my ESL endorsement. And that really opened up doors for me to be able to teach and be kind of a switch teacher who could do either the bilingual side or the monolingual side in our school. It was in the suburbs of Chicago. And then from there, my passion just really started to grow. Most of my students were second language, and just to be able to work with them was such an incredible experience. And then moving abroad, of course, being here, I worked at an international school for the first 3 years that I was here and worked with students from around the world. And that was incredible to, have a student from Holland come into my class who had no English at all. And then just to see her develop throughout the year and to see where she was at the end, and to meet students from all over and just really experience different cultures that they brought into the classroom was an incredible gift. So being abroad has really helped kind of fan the flame of my love for supporting ELLs. And I also think just my experience of being here, having to speak, we just were in the States for 3 weeks, coming back and having this delay of language again, and the struggle of switching the chip to go back to speaking Spanish most of the day, and feeling what many of our parents feel who are ELL parents, and our students feel, of just those struggles that a lot of us, if we didn't ever have experiences like that, we wouldn't really understand what it's like. So that's really, become a passion of mine as well, because I've experienced that daily of still struggling after 10 years of being like, oh, this language is hard. And it's good to be out of my comfort zone, because that's what a lot of our students feel. So
I can relate for sure. I also minored in Spanish, thankfully. That came in handy. And it's been really cool for my son to see him, like he's just now starting to talk. He's 2. And his nanny is, fluent in Spanish, doesn't really speak any English, and we speak English at home, but he hears me speak Spanish with her. And his words are like 50-50. So he loves like soda water. And so he calls it spicy agua. That's just like one example of like a hybrid like Spanglish thing he has going on. So I'm like, I don't know how this is going to go, but I think it's great. So it
will work out. Yeah, it's really incredible to watch your kids, do it from a younger age. And that's how our girls are as well.
And then I'm like,
we know it's to learn it late.
Yeah, his Spanish is going to be better than mine. That's me embarrassing when he's in like high school.
Hey, I think that's a gift. Then they can translate for me, and I can take a seat back and not have to think.
True. But I love that point about, the empathy piece, like really understanding, because you're the one who's not speaking the primary language living abroad. So you can really understand how our parents may be feeling, or the students themselves, obviously. And I'm curious, the student from Holland, like at the international school, did she know you were teaching her English? Did she know any Spanish, or was she trying to learn both living in Panama?
No, so the international school we were at, it was mainly English, and then they would get like 45 minutes 4 times a week of Spanish. So the priority was really for her to learn English first. She ended up learning Spanish as well, just because a lot of the students, during recess, during lunch, were Spanish speaking. Whether they weren't all from Panama, but we had a lot of Venezuelans, Colombians. So just the majority of students were native Spanish speakers. So she ended up picking it up through just conversation, but the priority was her to learn English.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So then you kind of got into ELL a little more, and you now serve teachers to help support them. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah. So that passion is just really ignited, and I can't stop it now. I keep hearing stories of people who've come to the US and their story of, learning English. And it's just such a powerful thing to get to hear people's stories. So now I work from home. I have a TPT store where I provide materials for teachers who teach ESL students, whether that's a homeroom teacher, a counselor, a ESL teacher, just providing materials to help make that transition easier for our students and for the teacher. And I also have a membership mainly of ESL teachers where I provide the lesson plans and all the different resources to help all the different language levels and grade levels that they're supporting in the elementary and high school classrooms.
Oh, awesome. So all of it, you're covering K-12.
Yes.
Awesome. So how specifically, because my audience is school counselors, so how can school counselors either support the students directly or support the teachers when it comes to these students?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think, anybody listening right now, if you're even in a rural area of Wisconsin, you're probably seeing an increase of newcomers. So I want to define newcomers right now. Newcomers are usually defined as students who are entering the country, usually in their first 6 months of entering the country. So they usually don't have any background in English. They're brand new to learning English. They're brand new to the country. And so there's a lot going on, with supporting these students. You might also have experienced students who are coming to the school who don't know English, but a lot of them actually, it's like 85% of K through 5 ELL students are actually born in the country. So they could be Americans and coming into kindergarten without any background in English, but that's because their home language, they've been speaking Spanish or another language at home the whole time. So there is a difference in our newcomers and then like our beginner ELLs. But the big thing I think that school counselors can do and really help support the teachers and the students is when we have these students, this increase that we're seeing right now, many of those students are coming through very traumatic situations. If you think about it right now, you're having an influx of Ukrainian refugees, and thinking about how they've had to flee in such a quick moment and really not even process. So think of a 5-year-old who's leaving what they've known and now are coming into the United States, in a new language and just completely different environment. And so you're facing a lot of students that have experienced trauma. The same as we know, a lot of these Central American countries, thankfully, Costa Rica and Panama have pretty stable governments, and it's a pretty safe place for the majority of it. But many of these other countries, Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador, Mexico, it's not the same situation there. And so you have, again, families fleeing because of just really difficult situations, very hard governments to work with. They're paid very poorly. They're treated very poorly. There's not care. There's not education. And so now you see this increase in the United States coming in of students who don't even have the foundation in their native language, have had very traumatic experiences coming into the US. And so I think as a school counselor, that is a great way to come in and really help support the teachers of how do you work with a student who's been through trauma, because it's a very different approach. And we need to really start there before we can start focusing on any academics. When working with ELLs, the biggest thing I always say is building that relationship first. And so I think that's a great role for school counselors to take, is just helping teachers understand how to build relationships, how to build a safe classroom, for students be able to share when they're having a rough day. How do we, even if the students don't speak the language, even if they don't speak English, how can we create that atmosphere so that they feel comfortable and they feel safe? Because it might be the only place throughout the day that they feel that way, that they feel they can be themselves. Giving them space to process and to work through those things is really important. And sometimes as teachers, we're not trained on how to do that. And it's really, and now more than ever, I think your role as helping implement social emotional learning is crucial, because not just our newcomers, but all of our students have gone through so much in these last couple of years. And that really needs to be a priority. How can they think about academics when they're struggling so much emotionally and just trying to make sense of everything that's going on? Teachers really need help in supporting their students with that.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. So I think my two takeaways, first off, is that, like you said, supporting the teachers so they can support the students. So, how can we help our teachers do like a training or something on how they can address these students who have experienced trauma? But then also I'm thinking, I always do I have a cutesy, new students, back to school group. And it's always usually, kids who transfer from another school or something, like a get to know you thing. But I'm thinking counselors could do like a small group, just for newcomers, because you'll likely have more than one. I find at schools I've worked at in the past, there's like a certain population who, like a lot of them live in the area, so you would have like several newcomers. So I think doing a group would be really cool. So then they feel like they're not alone. And then maybe they already know some of the other group members, and that could be a cool place to start in direct services for students.
Yes, I love that idea, Rachel. I think that's really just so important to prioritize, one, having them be able to see they're not the only one in the school that's like them. And so they can build connections that way. That's a hard thing, for our students to find friendships right away, especially if they don't speak the language. So if they can see there's other kids in the school who speak the same language, or, that just maybe have had similar experiences, or just that there's a teacher that's, friendly and sitting down and wants to play games with them, or, takes the time to eat lunch with them. Those things really go a long way. We don't want to underestimate the power of building relationships that way. And I think another thing with that, if you're having a newcomer group and they don't, you might speak Spanish and maybe those kids do, but there are so many different languages that we're now seeing in the schools. So if you have a student who is fluent in English, but also speaks that same native language, it might be a great idea to pull that student and have them come and help translate and help, really convey because for the students, it might be confusing. Who is this teacher? Why are they meeting with me? Is this always happened? Schools are so different in the United States than all these other countries, especially what we're seeing, in Central America. And so it's just bombarded with like all these new things. So if you have somebody in there, another student or another teacher that speaks that native language, that can really help convey what the school is about, who you are, helping give a tour of the school, showing the different teachers, all of those things would be really helpful to help them feel safe and comfortable in the school building.
Yeah, I love that idea. Maybe pairing them up with like a buddy or a mentor. Maybe a student has been there the year prior, but they've been in the same situation. Yeah, that's a great idea. What about?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, what about tips for working with these parents, especially if they don't speak English? How can we support the parents and communicate with them?
That's a great question. So what I would say, there's so many resources now, which is incredible, for helping parents who don't speak English understand what it's like in the school, how they can help support. I think, two things that come to mind. One, I think having an open mind and not, really evaluating maybe biases that we have that we didn't realize were there until we start working with a certain population. And we see, I remember we were in a very large Hispanic population in Chicago, and many of the teachers kind of had this bias of like, oh, well, the parents aren't coming and they don't care. And that was absolutely not it. Many of the parents were working 2-3 jobs, or had, 4 or 5 kids at home that they didn't have somebody that could come and babysit for a couple hours to come to a parent night and things like that. And so just really evaluating any biases that we might have with working with different cultures, and taking care of those right away before we work with those parents is huge. And then also just utilizing things that are around. One of the best things I've seen to communicate with parents is called talking points. And I believe it's free. Your school can also do a subscription. And if you have a large population of different speakers of different languages, then you might want to encourage your principals to get this. But you can send a text to these parents and it immediately translates into their language. And so that's also kind of having an awareness of how do these parents best respond. Many of them, probably a text is going to be the best way that you're going to get any feedback from them, or just really communicating with them over email, over sending a letter home, things like that. So really finding what works with those parents and showing them, that you're here to support them, you're here to help them. A lot of these parents, if they're coming in as newcomers, they are going to need help from the school. They're going to need, just showing them awareness of what's available to them. Something as simple as like, hey, do you know there's a library that you can go for free and get free books? Like in Panama, we don't have libraries. I don't know about Costa Rica, but that's not something that's part of the culture here. And so that right there is a huge benefit to just showcasing to parents, hey, this is available, or this community center is available and they can help you if you're trying to look for a job. And all of that you can translate through talking points, or there's a few other different apps like that immediately translate.
That's awesome. I've never heard of that. We'll link to it in the show notes for sure. Yeah. That's a great resource. And it's funny you mentioned the libraries. So we don't have any in my area, but we're going to San Jose to the Capitol to have the baby. And I was thinking like, oh, maybe there's a library there we can go to, because my son loves books, but we read the same books over and over, and they're expensive. Like I'll buy them off Amazon, like from the States, and my family and friends will bring them down, but they're like $12 a book. I'm like, I just want to go to the public library, like get 10 out. We read them, then we return them, we get more. And I loved the library as a kid. So I was thinking, I was like, oh, I hope we have one. I really don't know though. Yeah. But even in the city, you guys don't have public libraries?
There's one that's like the Biblioteca Nacional, like the National Library, but there's not a kids section. So it's like encyclopedia.
Yeah.
So every time we go back to the States, the first thing we do, like, okay, go to the library. How many books can we check out? 30.
Yeah.
All 30. So
he's so into books. So I know, next time we go back to the States, we'll have to do a library trip for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, these are great strategies. Do you have any more like specific strategies that we can do to help support our newcomers?
I think the biggest thing is realizing just smiling and showing that you are a friendly, helpful person goes a long way, both with the parents and with the students. I think sometimes we feel an immediate like fear, overwhelm if they don't speak English and I don't speak their language. How can I communicate? But really, it goes a long way just showing them that you're there to help. If you, especially those first couple days as a counselor, if you can come in and help support a teacher who has newcomers, and you probably have ESL teachers in the school as well, but even just being a friendly face at the entrance of the school, holding pictures up, helping them figure out, having a visual of showing them where their classroom is, telling them who their teacher is. All of those little things really will go a long way in their educational journey. I mean, it immediately will help to lower that fear of what am I going into here.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take a lot, but just, being that helpful person around that they see you and know and can smile and start to say hi and things like that. It really will go a long way.
Definitely. And I'm thinking this for parents too. I'll never forget in one of my internships, the counselor I was working with, we had a parent coming in, and it was like a single mom, like low income situation. They were living in a hotel, and she was just trying to chat with her. And we usually at the parent meetings, we'd all have our computers out, we're all sitting at a desk, and it's got to be kind of intimidating. But for this mom, she's like, I'm just going to get out a notebook and like, just like sit with her. I'm going to like put my computer away, and I can like type the notes in later or whatever. And she like explained that she was doing that just to make, the mom feel more comfortable and less intimidating. And I know sometimes those meetings we would have with parents, there'd be like 5, the teacher, the specialist, the admin, everyone in there, everyone's got their computer out or whatever. And that's got to be really intimidating. Or if you have a translator in there too. So just little things to make everyone feel more comfortable. I think that's a great reminder.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I can share with you and your listeners, I have some survival cards that have pictures that, are great to just have like on your lanyard or to have available for teachers to be able to use. Or if, at the beginning of the year, I know a lot of the specialist teachers are kind of at different parts of the school to make sure all the kids get where they need to go. And those would be great to have. They're just real pictures that kind of help, say like, I'm lost, or this is your teacher, or this is a hallway. I mean, there's just so many things that we don't realize are so new to these students.
Right. Yeah, that would be great. If you could
share. I'll share that link with you and you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Beth. Well, tell us, where can we find you if people want to learn more about you and more strategies for this?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Inspiring Young Learners, and the same on Teachers Pay Teachers. You can find this.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. This is a blast, and I hope everyone has a great back to school year.
I hope you loved the interview I had with Beth. If you want to learn more about her, we will link to how you can contact her in the show notes. You can find her on Instagram over at Inspiring Young Learners. I would love to know if you guys have experience working with newcomers, or I would love to know how this is working at your school. So please send me a message over on Instagram at Bright Futures Counseling. I'm always curious to know what you guys are up to. Okay, let's talk next week.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.